Palisade Radio is brought to you by First Majestic Silver Corp, one of the world's purest and fastest growing silver mining companies.
Welcome back to another episode of Palisade Radio. This is your host, Colin Cattell. On the show with us today is returning guest Keith Neumeyer. Keith, welcome back on the show.
Well, thanks very much, Colin. Good to be here.
In 1992, you founded First Quantum Minerals, which consequently became one of the largest copper producers in the world. In 2002, you founded First Majestic Silver Corp, which also became a multi-billion-dollar business. And now you've founded First Mining Finance, which is in the business of taking on undervalued projects in a depressed market. As gold and silver prices begin to have a small rally here, I want to ask you to look back at all the bear markets you've experienced in the mining space and speak to how bad the current situation truly is.
Okay, well, first off, buying assets, is very critical because, if you buy assets at the bottom of the market, you create value. If you buy assets at the top of the market, you destroy value. And I think we see that time and time again. And one thing I've proven, I think, in my career, which is now, 32 years, crazy, but it is true, that I'm a good buyer. I know when to buy assets. And if you look at First Quantum and you look at First Majestic, in both of those situations, I was buying assets when no one wanted them. People were actually calling me crazy. What are you doing? And just like, it's my view. And I was right in both cases. In the case of First Mining Finance, I'm doing exactly the same thing all over. But, to your question, the valuations that we're seeing today are just so ridiculous. Gold has not gone down that much. Gold prices are $1,900. They're close to $1,200 or $1,150 today. Okay, fine. It's a reasonable correction. But you've got stocks that are down 80 or 90%. And they far exceeded the drop in the metal prices, and that's what I'm doing. I'm taking advantage of that difference.
And Keith, on the topic of buying assets in the bottom of the market as opposed to the top of the market, let's talk about First Majestic Silver Corp, where you just finished the friendly takeover of Silvercrest. Congratulations on the completion there. There's a pretty widely accepted view that it's a buyer's market today, but your recent merger/acquisition with Silvercrest was done in shares of First Majestic, which is also off from its highs quite a bit. I want to ask you this to say, how do you, as the CEO of a company or any other company, decide what makes sense from an acquisition standpoint, because there are so many good buys at the bottom of the market right now?
Well, I do disagree with you to one degree. There's not a lot of good buys. As the CEO of First Majestic and actually the largest private shareholder of First Majestic, the dilution is obviously the very key component of any strategy that we would do in acquisitions. And I have to look at what is it going to add. Is it going to add ounces? Is it going to add resources? Is it going to add earnings? Is it going to add cash? Does it strengthen our business or does it weaken our business? And historically, if you go back the last 12 years, First Majestic now in this 12th year, you look at our strategy, and what we did was we acquired assets that were undervalued in my view. They were poorly run, and we looked at them and said, hey, we could drill, we could develop, we could make this into a better operation, we can make it bigger. And we were very successful in doing that. And we became the second largest silver producer in Mexico in a matter of 10 years by using that strategy. Now, today, it's a little bit different because our cash is low, we're in the $50 million range. So we have to be very careful with our treasury. So we can't afford to go buy an asset today that requires a 20 or 30 or 40 or $50 million investment because we can't raise the money. The money's not there. Our treasury's not strong enough to do it. So in the case of Silvercrest, that was a completely clean transaction. There's not a single dollar that we need to invest in that operation. It's cash flow positive today and needs zero investment. It's a beautiful acquisition. And I don't think there's very many acquisitions like that out there, and that's why we put the trigger on that acquisition.
I know from our earlier topics that you're a major silver bull, maybe more so than on another precious metal such as gold. An outside viewer would likely think that you're agnostic on which resource to invest in simply because you first started with copper, then you moved to silver in the 2000s, and now with First Mining Finance, you're doing a little bit of several different commodities at once. My question here is, do you have a commodity-specific preference, or does it depend on the timing of each acquisition?
I like commodities, period. Some commodities I like less than others. Copper, zinc, silver, of course, and gold. I'm a big fan of. And the reason why is because it all comes down to supply and demand fundamentals. The human population is not going backwards, at least not anytime soon. So, of course, mining is very cyclical. It does go through boom and bust periods, and I've seen many boom and bust periods in my career, and I'm sure over the next 50 years there'll be many more boom and bust periods. But we need metals, and you're not going to be driving your automobile, you're not going to be building a home, you're not going to be opening up a refrigerator without metals. And silver, for me, I think is one of the most interesting metals because of that exact reason. As we become more electrified as a human population, the demands for silver actually increase dramatically. And we're seeing electric cars, we're seeing fuel cell cars, seem to be going to be the next wave. We're seeing robotics, battery technologies, solar panels. Silver's been in a deficit for 30 years, and I don't think the street has really woken up to it. Obviously, we're not seeing it in the price, which I think is probably confusing to some people. But if you just look at the above ground supplies of silver itself, we had 5 billion ounces of silver on the planet during the 80s when photography was the primary use of silver. Today, that's down to 1 billion ounces. So that's 4 billion ounces. Where has it gone? It's gone into waste dumps. It's gone to oceans. It's gone. It's never going to be showing up again. Mine supply is around 800 million ounces a year. Consumption is about 1.1 billion. And that difference is basically the investment flows and recycling flows and so on and so forth. And it's a huge problem. And I believe that it will show up in the price eventually. And I do believe that silver will outperform all other metals, and that's why I'm a huge fan of silver. But in the case of First Majestic Finance, we're focused on gold because I think gold assets right now are just super cheap. I think there's a huge negative view about miners and gold particularly, and if I can buy gold ounces at the prices we're paying today, then I'll do that all day long until I either run out of money or run out of companies to buy.
Over the past few days, we've had a pretty violent rise up in the HUI. The metals have gone up a little bit. The HUI has gone from 105 to 125 in just 3 trading days, and that's been witnessed in the share price of First Majestic Silver. Based on your experience in the sector, does this violent move upwards quickly indicate to you that the bottom in the mining stocks has finally come?
Well, I've been saying for probably a year now that we've seen the bottom in the metals. 1430 silver, and we've tested a couple of times, and at least in that range, and it held pretty good. Gold looks like the 1075, 1100 range, held good. So I think the bottoms are in. On the metals. Now on the equity side, of course, it's somewhat different because you can have the metals bottom out for quite a period of time before people actually start moving money into the equities. And over the last couple of days, we've seen some money come into the equities. I think it's a little bit too early to say whether this is a new trend. I need to get back on it. I'm currently at a mining conference, and I need to get back on the road to talk to some institutions about what they're doing right now, how they're reallocating their capital. But I just came back from Denver 10 days ago, and the view was quite negative. There was no money going into the mining sector, and it didn't appear at that time that any money was going to go into the equities for quite some time. And the message I heard was, they needed to see a 10 or 20% move in equities before they even started to get interested. Now we've seen that, so it'll be very interesting over the next few weeks or few months if some of these big funds decide to allocate capital. They all know that the sector is extremely undervalued. We're almost 5 years in to a bear market. They all know, and they're all making their list. They're putting First Majestic on their list, they're putting First Mining on their list, you name it. They're creating their lists of stocks to buy when they're ready to buy. But I just, as I said, it'll be very interesting to see what happens over the next couple of months.
Your statement about the funds needing to see a 20% move and the fact that we've seen a 20% move in a lot of these equities in just 3 or 4 days underlines the fact of how quickly these things can move up. And a lot of people either forget, or younger people like myself have maybe never seen how quickly the market can turn around and the extreme gains that you get coming out of the bottom. And I read something a few days ago that said it takes a couple years to set yourself up in the right position, but millions can be made very quickly in this sector. I want to ask you, if the bottom is in the equities, what can investors expect over the next 1 to 2 years in terms of how the financial side of the business changes, how the share prices appreciate, how many more people rush into the sector? What do you expect to have happen?
Well, I've been saying for a couple of months now, and I'm not sure if your listeners have heard me in other interviews, but I've said in other interviews that this is back at the truck time, and this is a once in a decade opportunity, or even once in a lifetime opportunity for some people. And as I said earlier, the valuations that we're seeing are just so ridiculous, and I'm all in. And that's why I created First Mining Finance, because my entire net worth is in mining, in metals, and I'm quite comfortable with that. I own zero real estate, and I've got everything in my 2 companies, First Mining Finance and First Majestic Silver. I'm very happy with those 2 investments, and I will continue to buy more of both of those stocks. And even your viewers can look at my insider trading reports and and see my consistent buying our shares, because, as I said, this is back at the truck time, and we'll see. Of course, maybe I should be somewhat subjective, but my view, and to be quite clear, is I think we'll be seeing 1,000% gains over the next 3 to 5 years.
Wow. And Keith, on the note of silver, I was doing some research yesterday, and dealers are selling silver rounds far above spot price. Some of the American Eagles going for $21, $22 an ounce. Maple Leafs going for $20. Even generic rounds are going for $18, $19, despite the spot price being between $15 and $16 an ounce. And this is something we've seen on and off for the last couple of years, but it's the spread is very big right now. Does that have any indication of a quick move that's going to come in silver?
Yeah, we have seen a pretty interesting move over the last, silver's up about $1.50 in the last, week, I guess it is. And, it's interesting. I'm not, jumping up and down yet because, $16 silver is not really much to get too excited about, but, obviously it's better than $14.50. But, when I see, $18 silver, I'll say, okay, now things are changing. And at that point, these shorts that are in this market are going to really have a challenge, because there's been some short covering over the last while, and that's partly to do with the move we've seen, but also there's a physical problem as well that people are figuring out. That so it's bringing a new set of investors into this market, which these shorts I don't think realized was going to happen. And so there's 2 things unfolding in the silver market, which is causing the price to rise. It'll be interesting to see how strong the shorts are and how strong the new longs are. And, there's a battle in the market for sure. And, one thing in favor of the metals right now is we're going into great seasonality. October, November, December, January, February are the strongest months for metals. And so if I was short this market, I'd be extremely concerned, and I'd be covering pretty aggressively. And if that does happen, then we're going to see silver explode.
All right, and last question for you. Following the acquisition merger of Silvercrest into First Majestic, what can investors of both of your companies expect over the next 6 to 12 months? Any big plans moving forward?
Well, First Majestic, we've been looking around for acquisitions and we always do. If you look at how I built First Majestic, it was all through acquisitions. We've now taken out in the 12-year history of First Majestic, 4 different public companies. And as I said earlier, we're now the second largest silver producer in Mexico. We'll produce, we'll put out some guidance in January of 2016, but, we'll be, in the, 17, million or maybe higher range of, close to 20 million, I hope. But we'll see what the numbers look like when we put them out officially. But, those are big numbers, in the silver space. And, we'll continue to look around. There are opportunities out there that we're still looking at, and if we can pick up some cheap assets, because the market is still very stressed. Even though we've seen some relief over the last couple of days, this is not enough to take the stress out of the system. So there is still good opportunities out there to purchase, and obviously we're very active in that area. In the case of First Mining Finance, it's going after non-producers, so assets that are in junior companies, and the junior companies are the most distressed because there's just no money for them. Many of these junior companies are actually close to turning their lights out and going bankrupt, and I don't know if shareholders actually understand how bad it is in the junior space, and that's what creates the opportunity, and that's why I put First Mining Finance together, and we've taken out a couple of quite interesting assets for the last little while. We've only been public since April, and I think we've shown that we're pretty aggressive, and we're going to continue that stance. We've got several other companies we're looking at, and some we're in discussions with currently. I can't predict exactly which ones will come into our umbrella, but I can guarantee our shareholders that there's going to be more action in the space, and we're going to be very active acquiring other companies.
Great. So that's First Mining Finance Corp, which can be found at firstminingfinance.com, and First Majestic Silver Corp, which you can find out more information at firstmajestic.com. Keith, thanks so much for coming back on the show, and I hope you have a great rest of the time in Mexico there.
Well, thanks for the opportunity.
Think you understand the junior mining sector, and you think that the participants in the mining sector, junior mining sector, are good people and kind people, hit the bid.
And the world is always going to need raw material. It's going to need copper and gold and nickel and so forth.
Totally destabilized. Hey, troll, did you hear what's going on in Yemen, or are you too stupid?